Welcome, beautiful friends, to the Way of Mastery. We are beginning our deepening of lesson number 12 tonight. Receive the pearls of grace. It doesn't say earn the pearls of grace. It doesn't say effort at finding the pearls of grace. It says receive, meaning we simply open our being and receive it as a bestowal from our Creator. We don't have to earn God's love. That's one of the big, crazy misperceptions we have to get over, is that we have to earn God's love. Receive the pearls of grace. And just so you know, God's got your address. God knows how to get to you. God is pressing itself upon you all the time. We just don't recognize it sometimes. So receive the pearls of grace. So do that tonight. Just open your mind, open your being, relax, and let it be given. You know, we do these deepenings. This is when we give all our pebbles to God and Jeshua, and they drop them in our ponds for us. We don't even have to be smart enough to drop pebbles in our own pond. But we'll start tonight with the Aramaic Lord's Prayer. For those of you who are new, this is JM, who is Yeshua's channel for the Way of Mastery. Sometimes it's called the Way, it's called the Pathway to the Christ Mind, it's called lots of things. But this is JM speaking here, Yeshua's version of the Lord's Prayer. And after that, Leslie, Cindy's out of town tonight, so help me say thank you and welcome to Leslie, who will be producing tonight. So she will read the English version.
Awun. The Boshmaya, Nita Kadash Shamach, Tete Malkuda, Neve Asivinach, Akina the Boshmaya O Baraha, Haulan Lachman, Zunkanan Yamana, Boshwoklan Halbain, Akina Dapanan, Shwakin Il Hayabain, Ula Talan Il Nisyan, El Passam Membisha, Matal de Lachim El Kuda, Uhaila, Utish Bhakta, La Alam, Amen. Amen.
Father, Mother of the Cosmos, shimmering light of all, focus your light within us as we breathe your holy breath. Enter the sanctuary of our hearts, uniting within us the sacred rays of your power and beauty. Let your heart's desire unite heaven and earth through our sacred union. Help us fulfill what lies within the circle of our lives today. Forgive our secret fears as we freely choose to forgive the secret fears of others. Let us not enter forgetfulness, tempted by false appearances. For from your astonishing fire comes the eternal song which sanctifies all, renewed eternally in our lives and throughout creation. We seal these words in our hearts, committed in trust and faith. Amen.
Thank you, Leslie. Well done. You know, when you're listening to him, there's that last line where he goes, La Alam, really kind of excited. That's this last line. We seal these words in our hearts, committed in trust and faith. Just recognize when he's speaking it, the enthusiasm with which he's emphasizing that line. We seal it. We seal these words in our hearts, in faith, committed in trust and faith. It's just such a joyful expression. I mean, it's a now thing. It's not a, oh gosh, please come sometime in the future, Father. It's a now thing. I just always loved that closing. La Alam. Amen. Amen. So anyway, there you go. So who's been doing their 5 minutes of abiding as Christ? Most important practice in the entire pathway. This is the end of the way of the heart. He gave us lots of exercises and practices to do along the pathway so far. This is the foundation that will take you the rest of the way through the pathway until all you do is abide as Christ. There won't be any time you won't be abiding as Christ. Because when you're Christ, you'll know, well, why would I want to hang out as the ego for even 10 or 15 minutes? You know, just won't be much appeal. So we'll do this together.
Begin now to utilize some time each day without letting a day go by in which you sit with yourself. Sit with you and start by acknowledging that you are one with God. Give yourself 5 minutes to choose, to practice choosing, how you will experience sitting in a chair. Practice sitting in a chair as an infinite creator of exactly what you are experiencing in your emotional field. Utilize this very process as a symbol of preparing the mind for the dropping of a pebble into it, out of which will reverberate the vibrations or ripples that will come back to you. Therefore, where you are in this moment, look around. Look at the objects that you see. Look at the people that you see around you, if there are any. Whatever sounds may be coming into your field of awareness, whatever pictures or ideas you may hold of what you are or what the world is, these are all fleeting and temporary illusions. They will pass away and begin passing away the moment they were created. Look at all that is around you and decide what value it holds for you. Will you see it as something that you must have in your existence? Or will you choose to see it as something you've playfully drawn to yourself? You appreciate it and it can be gone tomorrow, and your peace will not be disturbed. Which way will you view the world? It begins with 5 minutes in which you acknowledge that you can create whatever experience you want as a feeling that floods through your awareness, as a quality of thought that you allow to keep repeating in the mind. You can sit in a chair as an awakened Christ now. For just 5 minutes, experience yourself as Christ, crystallizing a body as a temporary teaching and learning communication device, plopping itself into a chair in a totally neutral corner of creation because you want to have the experience of sitting blissfully at peace in your perfect knowledge of your union with God in this moment.
I don't know about you guys, but if for 5 minutes you can create that joyful or that peaceful or that happy or that present an experience, clearly you're awake to being the creator of it. Just string every 5 minutes of pearls together and walk the world in the way you choose to walk the world, at peace, in union and communion. Feels great. You're worth it. Why not? Why not? Just saying. Okay, here we go. You ready, Leslie?
Now we begin. And again, greetings unto you, beloved and holy friends. Once again, we come forth to abide with you. Once again, we come forth to celebrate with you. Once again, we come to abide with the holy mind that is the sonship. We come to abide with our brothers and sisters, and we come as brothers and sisters. And indeed, we come forth to abide in that process whereby the sonship is remembering itself as the Son. Something to contemplate there. Indeed, beloved friends, I am one who comes forth in this particular work to be as the primary spokesman through this, my beloved brother, to share that with you which already resides within you. I come forth, we come forth, to join with you who have chosen to answer a certain call to bring forth a creative expression that can signify to the world the truth that alone can set this world free. Free of what? Free of fear and all the children that fear begets, guilt, dishonesty, unworthiness, limitation, the need for suffering, judgment, and the list goes on and on. But ultimately, when a gardener seeks to improve the quality of the soil from which the gardener would want his flowers to bloom forth, the gardener seeks not to look upon the effects of a weed, that is, that which is above the surface, but rather make haste and goes for the root. And when the root has been pulled up, the effects of that weed can no more be seen.
Wow. Another love letter in the first paragraph. Has anybody noticed a trend? He acknowledges us as the truth of what we are, not what we think we are, as the holy childs of God, holy and beloved friends. This time he makes a distinction that it's a group of beings. It's not just him. He's identifying himself as the spokesperson. But in this pathway later on, he will identify that group of beings as the Christ Council. It's just a group of beings who have previously, at least seemed to be that way in time and space, awoken to the truth of our very nature and abide exclusively in identification with the Christ mind, or the mind of God, or the one holy sonship. But we come forth again to abide with the holy mind that is the sonship. The mind you think which you would call your mind is not that one mind which is the sonship. That mind constitutes the illusion. That mind is the one that we think is ego. Each of you here, I've talked to many of you, have been hearing a lot of inner guidance. That inner guidance is arising from the one mind that is the sonship. But we come to abide with our brothers and sisters, and we come as brothers and sisters. So again, he's acknowledging our perfect equality. I don't know if anybody's considered that. We're in 12 lessons. I think he's trying to make a point. He talks about our perfect equality every lesson. That means that it's true, and it's true now. We're using just as much creative power to deny what we are as he's using creative power to try and remind us of who we are. It takes just as much creative influence, just as much creatorness to create, I'm this body on this tiny little world called Earth, as it does to be in communion with all of creation as he's consciously. So we're not doing anything wrong or bad. We're just creating in a way that if you're in this room or you're listening to this video, we're over it. We've had enough of plain separation. But remember when he said, these things I shall do and you too shall do? Well, what are we waiting for? Perfect equals now. But just look within your consciousness at how much you reside in a belief that you are not equal to Him. All of that is resting on what he's calling one of these weeds. It's all a bunch of misperceptions. So we'll have this idea that, oh, I'm just this body mind, or oh my God, this bill came and I don't have the money to pay it. I'm not powerful. I'm not this. I'm not that. I wonder if you just might consider for a moment. He says we're perfect equals. And that must be true now. So if I'm believing I'm not powerful, clearly I have weeds in my garden. The fact that you're believing I'm not powerful is the surface. That's the top weed. That's the thought that you're seeing. That's like the branch or the leaves of the weed. He's saying it doesn't do any good to just say, take that thought, I'm not powerful, I'm not equal to Jeshua, and turn it around and go, I'm equal to Jeshua. That won't do you any good. That's just like snipping the weed, but not actually digging the roots up. So that's when you turn to the Spirit and say, okay, Jeshua, I recognize, I really do believe we're not equals. I mean, go ahead and admit it. We probably believe we're not equals. So help me identify the roots deep in my unconscious, deep in my being, which are giving birth to this misperception, and help me uproot the root so that that misperception will no longer arise, so that that weed of fear of I'm not equal will not be there anymore. Because otherwise you're just trading one thought for another thought. You're not actually getting rid of the source of the misperception. And if you'll work with your Spirit, then or your guides, you could say, okay, I see I have this belief I'm not equal to Jeshua. Show me where those weeds are. Not just the thoughts, I'm aware of that. Or if you're not, then ask to see that. But help me uncover and pull the roots of these misperceptions up so that you can cultivate in this garden the truth of what you are and embody the equality that He's putting forth. So they're taking great joy in bringing forth a creative expression like this pathway, or like the Course in Miracles, or like I Am the Word, or like the Course of Love. And by the way, those are just the ones in English. You know, the foreign languages are not being left out of this. They're submitting and delivering pathways in many, many cultures in this world. Because, you know, it doesn't matter what language we think we speak, what continent we think we live on, we're all still the holy child of God. So anyway, they're just trying to set us free. And set us free from what? Free from fear and all the children that it begets. And oftentimes we think fear as just a feeling. We don't recognize that guilt, dishonesty, unworthiness is all fear. I mean, dishonesty is an interesting one. Everybody's in here is familiar with lying, right? You're also familiar with the scale that you think you have of white lies, which shifts and moves depending on which lie you think you need to tell and to whom in a specific situation. Has anybody noticed that within your consciousness? It's like I wouldn't tell that lie, and all of a sudden you find yourself telling that lie, and you give yourself a really good reason why you're doing that. Well, what's underneath dishonesty? There's fear. If you knew who you were, you wouldn't have fear. You would be able and willing to be perfectly honest. I was having a private sit with someone today. It was a beautiful session. It was very powerful. And we did some of that channeled listening that we're talking about. So the question arose in me to ask this being, have you ever made a mistake? So she turned within, she asked the question, and immediately and very emphatically, with a feeling of knowing, came the word, no, you've never made a mistake. The next question was, is it possible to ever make a mistake? She turns within, asks the question. Again, immediately with great knowing comes no. It's not possible to make a mistake. So you might just take a moment right now and ask your guide those two questions and see what answers you get. Have I ever made a mistake, and is it possible to make a mistake? If you're willing to live in the answer I know you just heard, where does guilt go? Guilt has to do with the past. If you couldn't have ever made a mistake, what is there to be guilty about? If you can't make a mistake in the future, what's there to be dishonest about? If you've never made a mistake and you can't make a mistake, what's there to feel unworthy about? What's there to need suffering about? What's there any need to judge yourself or anyone else? Because you can ask the Spirit, is it also true for everyone that they've never made a mistake and that they can't make a mistake? So why judge? That's going and getting some roots and pulling it up, because we all have a very robust database of believing we've made mistakes. So we see thousands of weeds in our consciousness of all the mistakes that we've made in the past. And it's like, it feels overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, how do I pull up all of those weeds? Well, with that one question, you could pull up all of those roots like that. If you're truly willing to let into your consciousness you've never made a mistake. And you can't make a mistake. This is so much fun.
Therefore, in truth, we come not to improve what you would be thinking of as the surface of the garden, the surface of the soil, but to strike at the root that resides deep within the mind, in the depth which I have called the heart, or the soul. All that we endeavor to do, then, is designed to uproot the weed of fear that has made a home in the depth of your being. And in this past year, as you would know time, we have endeavored to share with you what we have chosen to call the way of the heart, which has required, for those of you that have truly participated in the devotion necessary to extract the wisdom which has been offered to you, the way of the heart has been designed to bypass the cognitive or thinking mind, and to strike at the roots of fear that abide in the depth of the mind, and therefore resides in a place that is, by and large, what you would call unconscious. All that we do seeks to dissolve that root from the depth of your being. We cannot do this to you, we can only do it with you, for never can anything be forced upon the mind of the Son of God. The Holy Spirit makes no effort to usurp or take from you your freedom, for in your freedom all power under heaven and earth resides. And grace does not descend until your Father knows that you are willing to prepare a place to receive it. And this is why, in the process of healing and awakening, it is not necessary to seek for love. It is only necessary to prepare the place, the soil, by choosing to discover the obstacles to love, which all come down to fear, and to be willing to loosen that root, that it might be removed from the garden of your consciousness.
How many of you have listened to one of these lessons? And I know there's many of you who've listened to them over and over and over and over. I did some of that too. Only to find out you can't remember what it was. And then feel frightened that you can't remember what it was and feel like you need to study it even harder. You're not really supposed to remember what it was. That's actually a good sign. That's the thinking egoic mind saying, I'm not getting this. But the fact that you're not remembering it is that it's working perfectly. So just let that drop in. It's not through more effort and harder study. That's the title of this lesson. Receive the pearls of grace. Not by efforting or striving or becoming an intellectual master of the words here. That can actually countermand part of what's getting undone in the depth of your consciousness if you turn it into a theology that's about the words. So let the work, it's not so much that you study a way of mastery. The way of mastery does you, so long as you don't try and manage the process, so long as you don't object to it. It actually does you in your undoing of your identity of yourself. So hallelujah, it's designed to bypass the cognitive or thinking mind. And for those of us who did A Course in Miracles first, it is nice to get a pathway which is designed to not engage the cognitive or thinking mind. So it's all about the roots. So when you get triggered about something, you oftentimes want to go to Spirit and say, tell me what this is about, whatever triggered you. Rather ask the Spirit, show me the unconscious root of fear that is manifest in this expression. Do you see what I mean? Go to where the root is, not the situation that happened. Because the situation that happened is only, God's only showing you, here's the fruits of what you've grown in your garden. So it doesn't do you any good to complain about the fruits or the interactions that you're having or what's triggering you. It's a matter of, I see I've planted something in my garden that I don't want there. Spirit, help me find the roots of this and extract it at its cause, not the effects. So oftentimes we'll have conflict with somebody, and most of us say, what you really want is, I want the Spirit to change that person's behavior. I want them to behave differently so that I don't get triggered. What it's really about is, show me where I have unconsciously planted this root of fear, that this being is now gracious enough to show up and reflect it back to me. Rather, fall at their feet and thank them for showing you where you've got a root of fear, and go after the root with the Spirit. And you don't have to wait for situations to show up. You can ask your guide, what's the next fear that I'm ready to pull the root up? And see what comes. Show that to me. Okay, great. Once that one's done, what's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one? If you wanted, you could even go back to the previous slide and said, show me where I'm in guilt, show me where I have unworthiness, show me where I'm being consistently dishonest. All of those are like an ego lobotomy. How many of us have actually been pissed off that Spirit won't just do it? If Jesus is so damn powerful, why won't He just fix this problem? Well, you recognize, then that would make you less than Him. I think I've shared this before, but at one point I went to Him and I said, I want to surrender my ability to choose fear, my ability to create fear, my ability to choose for the ego. And He said, can't help you with that, brother. I was like, what? I thought that was the point. I thought I had gotten to I'd climbed the mountain and I was willing to do this. He said, I can't help you with that. I said, why? And He said, that would be taking your power away from you. I'm here to wake you up to your creative power, not limit your creative power. You must choose for love, but that doesn't mean that the choice for fear is surrendered. It just means that you consistently make the choice for love. Because to say, I'm an infinite being, but I don't have infinite choice to even choose fear, if you could truly abdicate that, you would not be infinite anymore. You would be less than powerful. So this is actually one of the greatest expressions of love, to not make us weak and do it for us. because then we would always be subjugated to some higher power. He even said earlier, God itself can't do this for you, because you're already an aspect of God in perfect equality. But they can only do it with you. And I don't remember, maybe it was lesson 3 or 4, he said, they come forth with joy to abide with us. Do you know how much joy they get out of helping you wake up to your infinite self? Do you know that's their only function? It's not like they've got other stuff to do creating universes and they get to your awakening like on the side or something. It's their joy to honor you as an infinite creator and bring you into that conscious awareness. So every time you turn and ask, you're giving them the ability to channel God's love to you. So why would you limit their joy by thinking for yourself or doing anything for yourself? He said when he walked the world, of myself I do nothing. When you think you're doing it by yourself, you're actually accomplishing zero. You can't do anything for yourself except delay your joining and healing. So if you truly got and let it drop in your consciousness that every time you turn for guidance, you are creating an opportunity for them to be in joy and in their purpose, would you do it more frequently? Would you do it with less resistance? Would you approach it knowing how grateful they are because you're extending them an opportunity to be in joy? Now that's the kind of guidance you can start having a whole lot of fun with. And I would encourage you to turn it that way. Oftentimes we think we got to fix ourselves, we got to correct the ego, then we can turn to the Spirit and like go, I did it. They're there to help you undo it. You can't undo it on your own. You can't know what's unconscious in your consciousness unless they help illuminate it for you. So anyway, nothing can be forced upon the mind of God. And just go back and look. If you go back and you read the Bible about the message that He delivered, remember when they were about to stone the prostitute? Did He tell them to stop? No, He posed them a question because He was putting them at choice. He never commanded any other being other than to remind that being that they're at choice. So it's a really powerful thing to recognize. And look within your being where you're attempting to command and control other beings' choices. You must be in fear when you're doing that. If you're telling someone what they can do or can't do or should do or shouldn't do, you're meeting them in the level of illusion. By the way, don't you all hate it when somebody does it to you? Doesn't it piss you off? Of course. It's one of the most favorite games of the special relationship. Whew. For in your freedom, all power under heaven and earth resides. And that's the power to choose fear or love. To create hell within your consciousness and guilt and fear, or to create love and joy and happiness. To create I'm not awake now, or to create I and the Father are one. And all you're ever experiencing are the fruits of your choices, no one else's. The fruits of your choices. Whew. And grace does not descend until your Father knows that you are willing to prepare a place to receive it. He did a bunch of parables about this when he was walking the world, but so if he's using a symbol now. Before we use the pool with the pebbles, now he's talking about like a farmer's field. If you're like, God, come on, I want your bounty. Come plant your harvest in my consciousness, and your field is chock full of weeds. You haven't really prepared a place. because love can't come grow where fear already has all the territory. So doing this forgiveness work, uprooting all these sources of fear, is what's required so that love can come and descend, and there's a space made for it. And love will come. I promise you it'll come. Whew. And this is why in the process of healing and awakening, it's not necessary to seek for love, but only to prepare the soil. So some of you know, I know from my own thing, I carried some fears for a really long time. There were some I was ready to give over to Spirit and pull the weeds up. But some of those deeper senses of unworthiness we hold for a really long time. You don't have to hold them, but I would encourage you to weed them up and remove them from the garden of your consciousness.
And then that rain of grace that purifies, transforms, awakens, and brings Christed consciousness to the mind can descend gently. For when the rain falls upon hard ground, it strikes the soil and runs off, and the garden remains barren. But the wise gardener who has softened the soil, who has reached in and begun to pull up the roots, to sift the soil and make it soft and open and porous, with the intent of bringing forth a beautiful garden, will indeed then be assisted by the rain of grace that falls gently, without it being earned. 'Tis given freely. This year, drops of grace have been offered to you in each and every one of your months. Some of you have received, some you have not noticed. Some are waiting to penetrate the deeper levels of your consciousness as you continue in your willingness to release fear. And suddenly, a pearl of grace that has not yet been received will sink deep, and the recognition will come, the awakening will come, and suddenly you will find yourself saying, wait a minute, this insight, this vision, this realization I've just had, it sounds like something that was on tape number 1. I think I'll go back and listen. Yes, there it is. I wonder why I didn't notice it in the first time. It is simply the natural process in which the drops of rain of grace had not yet a place to be received.
So I've used another symbol about this when we were talking about the pond, that it's like if you're in fear, the pond's frozen. The pebbles of God, the revelations have all been thrown. They're just resting on top of the ice and are ready to fall into the pond of your consciousness when you melt the ice, when you release the fear. It's the same symbol he's talking about here. And they're freely given. I mean, this pathway, none of us had to create it. None of us had to consciously even understand it in order to enjoy it. None of us had to get approval. None of us had to already have forgiven enough. We just simply had to be willing. So the rain of grace, and it's just a gift. It's a bestowal. How ready are you and willing to receive? And some of us know where we have cultivated a place of receptiveness, and we've had revelation there, we've had insights, we feel more peace in an aspect of our life, but then we still have some parts of our garden that are hard as can be. It's just like we're not willing to let God in there because we're so fearful that we'll get judged. Absolutely not the case. It'll be the contrary. So, and I know I've noticed this some of you before already, especially if you go back and look at some Course in Miracles lessons, or you go back and you read a previous lesson, all of a sudden it's rich in a way that you're just like, oh my gosh, I get it. I see it, I feel it, I experience it. Well, that's the effect of your willingness to cultivate the space for that to be there. And it's no mistake that you're sent back to read one of those lessons, because all that's happening there, you've already gotten it in your garden. But your crazy, doubting, thinking mind is being given the opportunity to acknowledge, oh my gosh, there it is. in the hopes that that thinking part of your mind will further let go, let go, let go, let go. Let go of the doubt and rest into the trust that something greater is happening than I think I'm doing with my thinking mind. Whew. So let it rain, let it rain, let it rain, let it rain. Collect every bit of that rain. I mean, when I did this lesson with him, I had this vision, I had my field, and in my mind I went around and dug this huge trench all the way around the field of my consciousness so that if rain came and it ran off, it was going to get caught in those trenches. And I was making sure that I wasn't going to lose anything. I could go over there with a ladle or something and make it, transfer it. So the point is, how willing are you to receive? Not to make, not to create, but to receive. And there is a very active component in receiving. It's when we let go of our denial or of our unwillingness to receive. This is sexy.
Understand then, and this is of great importance as we move into this next year, that all that transpires from this point rests on how well the gardener has cultivated the soil with the tools that have been given. If they have not been utilized, the soil remains hard and the drops of rain run off and pool in the side of the garden, waiting for the soil to be properly prepared. Of all of these, that which can continue and will continue to serve you in the greatest will be the simple 5-minute practice of abiding as Christ and observing all that you see, all that you feel, all that you think, as though a perfectly awakened Christ was the only one sitting in that chair. I know that this sounds simplistic for you, but the way is easy and without effort. Complexity is born of the world and not from the mind of God. Therefore, continue well in that practice and allow it to be the foundation from which soil is prepared. The roots of fear are loosened, even in ways that you cannot comprehend with a thinking mind. For the roots of fear are not merely ideas. They are the effects of ideas. They've been allowed to penetrate deep into what you call the unconscious. This is why the way of transformation, which is, by the way, the entitlement, the title, that we will give what is to be shared during your next calendar year. It is why the way of transformation requires not striving, but allowing, not thinking, but letting go, feeling, not doing, but trusting.
So what are some of the tools that he gave us early in this pathway? Look with innocence upon yourself, curiosity, taking full responsibility, not blaming outside of yourself. If you remember the axioms, I and I alone are the creator of my experience. I need do nothing. Where am I doing something out of the belief that I have a need to do so? The only relationship that matters is the one with your God, your creative source. Stop putting all the special relationships in front of those. And early in the pathway, I think it was lesson 4 or something, he asked us to write these words on a piece of paper: ought, should, must, and have to. And we actually burnt them that night. For you that were here, we burnt them in the fireplace because that's what he suggested we do. Are you still living anywhere in your life with ought, should, must, or have to? If you are, it's a ripe place for you to go find roots of fear. If you're projecting ought, should, must, or have to on anyone or anything, if you're describing the government and using they ought to, they should, they must, they have to, or any other egoically created anonymous group somewhere out there, those are opportunities for you to go seek and dig up the roots with Spirit so that you can cultivate more opportunity, more space for grace to descend upon you. 5 minutes sitting in a chair, abiding as Christ. So what is that practice about? It's about recognizing that you're the creator of what you're experiencing. You can sit there pissed off and fuming, or you can sit there in peace, or you can sit there in joy. You can sit there any way you want. At some point, that will dawn on you to such a level in your being that you'll recognize, oh shit, it's not just when I'm sitting in the chair. It's when I'm sitting in the car. It's when I'm sitting in line, not liking the fact that the line is so long. All the time, I'm a creator. I wonder if I should start doing that consciously in the way that I want to instead of just running habitual old patterns. That's the fruit of this practice, is at some point it's going to dawn on you, I'm not just a creator when I'm doing 5 minutes consciously. I'm still that creator if I spend the other, 55 minutes in the hour doing it unconsciously. I'm still the creator of it. Maybe I should wake up to that fact and get conscious about it and exercise my choice to experience what I want. So when you're finding yourself angry or pissed off, who's doing that? We love to say it's them out there. Nope. So can you be in your anger and in your frustration and in your doubt as the infinite creator? I and I alone am creating this experience. Because if you don't own that you're the creator of it, you don't have any choice to change it, do you? Whew. He knows it sounds simplistic. I mean, just for a minute, has anybody considered the whole theory, we're God's child, we've somehow gone to sleep, we forgot who we are, we're having this hellish experience. God would like us to wake up. That's God's will that we be perfectly happy. Why would that be complex? I mean, would any of you do that to your beloved child? Set up an obstacle course for them to learn your love? But how many of you have felt like you're running a stinking awakening obstacle course? That's because you're using the ego as your guide, not the Spirit. Easy and simplistic. I mean, I did a dialogue early in The One Who Wakes Work using the easy button.
That was easy.
For God, what's hard? For the ego, everything's hard. And by the way, it seems to take a lot of time, and it seems like you'll never get it done. It's really easy to start discerning which voice you're listening to. Is my happiness in the future? Am I supposed to be working harder at this? Then you're listening to the ego one, and it's this one.
No. N-O. No!
Your choice. But this stuff goes deeper than our thinking mind. I mean, it was quite a revelation for me because I was convinced the ego that thinks it thinks had me convinced that I thought just by more thinking I could undo my thinking. Has anybody tried that one? Anybody else got caught in that trap? You know that one. Great. Yeah, if I just change I'm angry to I'm happy and just replace a couple of words, that'll do it. But you keep having your triggers, you keep getting... So it goes much, much deeper. That's why we need to be joined with Spirit so that this work can happen deep within our consciousness. Deep within our consciousness. Whew. So he talks about the way of transformation is coming for the next 12 lessons. And when they were channeling this for the first time, JM had no idea how long it was going to go. I mean, I think a lot of them were assuming, this is a year, we're getting to the end of it. And then this bomb gets dropped, there's 12 more lessons to come. The way of transformation. So requires not striving, but allowing. So how many have strived on this path? How many of you are fucking tired of the effort? Take a deep breath. Yeah. Take a deep breath and just let the pebble drop in. Maybe it's easier than I think. Now, it's funny, we can laugh, but there is a point where we can't help but to strive. And there's nothing wrong with it. Don't make it bad. But the ego, in its separated consciousness, only knows anything through lots of effort. So we approach the path from the ego because that's what we think we are. So it's not that we've done anything bad. I worked my ass off. I mean, if I had been, if ego striving for awakening were an Olympic event, I would have been the gold medalist. I'm just telling you, because I was trying harder with the thinking mind to undo itself but I know I can relate. Some of you I can feel are like nodding within, like, yeah, I know that one too. Remember when he talked early in the pathway about the 4 keys to the kingdom: desire, intention, allowance, and surrender, and that the most important one was allowance? And when he first dropped that pebble early in the pathway, most of us that were egoically identified took allowing to mean, oh, I just have to let everybody shit on me. I just have to let everybody take advantage of me. I just have to let all these bad things happen. I just won't have any control, blah, blah, blah. Does that sound familiar to anybody? He's pointing to a whole different kind of allowing. He's pointing to an allowing of allowing love to be what love is. Allowing help into your consciousness. Allowing the part of your being that thinks it's the maker and the doer to be undone. That's a whole different, welcome this kind of allowing. I had someone in this room come to sit with me for a private session, and they were like, if I just do that all allowing, I'll just be like a bump on a log. I won't move. I'll just like sit on the couch and be a vegetable. That's the crazy stuff our thinking mind thinks. Quite the contrary. This allowing will make a lot of space in your life for new things to be birthed. Not thinking, but letting go. Not thinking more. He started off with wanting us to trade thoughts, bad thoughts for positive thoughts, negative thoughts for hurtful thoughts. But he's asking us here to recognize that we have to go past thinking. And the last lesson, he asked us to welcome unobstructed feeling. And most of us started thinking right away, I don't want to do that. I don't want to feel everything. That'll suck. I only want to feel the things I want to feel. I don't want to feel that. But feeling is a different aspect of your being. And the ego uses thinking to scare us away from feeling. Because when we truly learn that we can feel any and everything, and that it can't affect us, it can't hurt us, feelings come and go, all of a sudden we don't need to resist them. We don't need to fear them. We actually open our being up and say, come. Every feeling, every energy, it's all welcome within my being. We give up resistance, and therefore we give up pain and suffering. It's easier than we think, but we think, because we think we don't want to feel. So feeling, not doing, but trusting. He talked about it in the Course in Miracles. Be very careful what jobs you give your thinking mind to do. You want your thinking mind to be unemployed, not give it a job left to do. Even to recite Course in Miracles lessons or Way of Mastery teachings. Because you don't want to leave the ego with some responsibility. You want to turn all of that over to the Spirit. Trusting, trusting, trusting. I can feel it out there. How do I trust? There's the thinker again wanting to jump in there rather than, okay, I don't know how, but it's going to happen. How do I do that? How many of you hear some of these teachings and immediate, how? How? A lot of people come to sit with me, it's about the how. The how, you turn the how into now in trust.
Those roots of fear must be dissolved at a level that is deeper than the conscious thinking mind can reach. The mind was never designed to be your master, but to become aligned as a servant of the awakened heart. Just like the flower blooms and sends forth its scent for all to see from the depth of the soil that is unseen but has been well prepared, so that the only roots that gather nourishment from the soul are the roots of that which speaks of life and beauty, not that which speaks of fear and unworthiness. Seek you then to seek no more, for the place is prepared for you, and you need only go to it. Therefore, we will be cultivating more deeply the art of surrendering, resting ever more deeply into that place of silence, which is the threshold to perfect wisdom divine. The way of the heart is the preparation of the soul, which allows the way of transformation to truly occur. And transformation is not complete unless it envelops, encompasses, and is expressed through the very life you know, right there on your speck of dust, whirling about one sun and a small part of one universe, your earth, your time frame, your relationships, your experience, your life as you know it, as you live it, as you breathe it, as you feel it.
So the ego loves the whole spiritual path because it thinks it's going to get the power of God. Because it wants to be all-powerful. Within the context of its own thinking, of its own intellect, it thinks it will become the master. But it was never designed to be the master. It was only designed to be, and he says it later in this pathway, a stupid tool, meaning it has no inherent intelligence of its own, but that the deeper being, the heart, uses the mind, the thinking mind, as a communication and communion device. Meaning it's like inanimate in and of itself. It has no consciousness of its own. It's informed by something significantly greater, significantly deeper. I've used a symbol about this that I think is a pretty good one. It tends to resonate with people. So if you imagine your mind as a puppy, right? How many of us feel like you can't control your mind? Well, sounds a lot like a puppy, right? Chews up things, shits everywhere, pees everywhere. You can relate. You've had to put new carpet in, haven't you? It does, because it's not been trained. It doesn't, but it's thinking it is to do its own thing. Now, many of us begin this pathway with mind training. We want to change that puppy's behavior. How many of you judge yourself in that effort? Well, that's like spanking the shit out of the puppy. So what do you do if you've got a puppy and you mistreat it and you hurt it and you spank it? It's going to grow up to be a very angry dog that's going to be a danger to you and everyone else. But if you take that puppy, that thinking mind that's never been trained, and you're very gentle and loving with it, nope, we're not going to go over there and chew, we're going to come back, we're not going to judge, we're going to come back. If you correct that puppy very gently and lovingly, what are you going to end up creating? A dog that is an incredibly faithful servant. You're going to create a lassie, if you will. I mean, you guys have seen owners with pets that, I mean, you could hang a steak in front of this dog's mouth and it won't take it until its master says yes. So if you've been judging yourself, you're beating the puppy. It's not about getting rid of the mind. It's rather about bringing it into faithful service to the heart, which will always correct it with love and without judgment. So be gentle with yourself. Because you beat on your mind and you get around other people who beat on their minds, nobody's happy. It's a dogfight. Anybody been in one of those recently? If you've got a spouse, you probably won't have to think back very far. Or if you're in a special relationship. But anyway, that's a beautiful symbol about what the proper role of the mind is and how to do correction and bring the mind into service to the heart. the depth of your being, the Christ mind, kind of however you want to see that. So coming up is the art of surrendering, resting ever more deeply into the place of silence, which is a threshold of perfect wisdom. The previous lesson was a meditation into the heart of Christ. He gave a whole bunch of tips about how to fall into that place, not through efforting, not through strategy, but by allowing. Remember that lesson? He asked us like 5 or 6 times, join me there, join me there, join me there, join me there, join me there. And then once he kind of got us there, it was like, stay, 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 like the puppy, stay. And it will obey. It won't run off and go thinking on its own. It will stay resting in this place, the perfect threshold of wisdom divine. And for those of you who are beginning to hear very accurate guidance, very specific guidance, you're beginning to touch the ability to rest in that place. The question for us then is, why do I not rest in that place all the time? Where do I still think I can rise up out of that and through my own thinking create something that is of value, where I can think for myself? And we're asked ever deeper to surrender all of those to the Spirit. I mean, because if you haven't noticed, just look at nature. Look at the world, the earth that's out there. I don't know about you guys, but there's a shit load of intelligence going on. There's creative potential being expressed in this world that will boggle, even if you think you're an artist, will completely crush your thinking mind's ability to even comprehend it. That's the mind we're asked to surrender to. I don't know about you, but that mind's got something going on. I mean, you know, this planet never falls out of orbit because we forget to think about it. Your heart doesn't stop beating because you forget to think about it. I mean, the intelligence we're asked to surrender to is infinite intelligence. And the little tiny thinking mind that you think with, I mean, just for a moment, can you even compare infinity against your thinking mind? Why hold on to that thinking mind? All it does, it is the mechanism of separation. It is the ego. Whew. So transformation is not complete unless it envelops, encompasses, and is expressed through the very life you're living right now. I mean, he's touched on it a couple times, but he's trying to get past this whole idea that was done in Christianity, that we're doing this for an afterlife experience. That we're doing all this to get into heaven so that we get to experience the kingdom later. If we were good. He's saying you can live it now, but to give everything to it. Your time frame, your relationships, your experience, your life as you know it, all of it. So that you hold no part out and you say, I'm responsible for this. God can have all of creation, but I still get to choose this little tiny part of my own being. Which is up to you. You're welcome to hold yourself apart from that intelligence as long as you want. But I can assure you, whenever you give that stuff up, you'll be grateful to have released it. I mean, so much peace comes from not having to be responsible, not having to be the maker and the doer, but just open and receive from an infinite intelligence. Rosa Maria has been stepping into her expression of Christ as Christ starts moving through her, and she's so relieved that she doesn't have to think about what to do at these events. She just has to show up and listen and let that consciousness that knows what's best for everybody in the room lead her in that way. Same thing I do up here is surrender into that and let it come. I mean, you don't know how peaceful it is to be stupid and to not even need to know and not even want to know anything intellectually. Whew.
So to many of you that are listening, and the breath is beginning to stop, let the breath flow and realize that with your grand technologies, you have the freedom to go back and see if there is anything you missed. As you do that, do it from a place of Christedness. I am that one choosing to enter the way of transformation whereby human consciousness The human lived experience becomes the living expression, the fruit which has sprung forth from the soil in which the root of grace and of love and of healing has been well planted. Not from the perspective that you are doing something amiss, but out of the desire to be the master gardener who brings forth that fruit which extends beauty and the scent of joy for all to be received, for all to see, for all to marvel at. And yet, that beauty that springs forth from the gardener's beautiful garden does not build up the ego of the master gardener, for a master gardener knows that he or she has only been the keeper of the soil. But the magic that brings forth the flower is not his or her possession. It is merely that which you have been given stewardship over, consciousness. And the consciousness is the gift of life, streaming forth from the mind of God. Your mind, then, is the soil of the garden, and all awakening and all transformation occurs nowhere save in that garden.
I know many of you have experienced forgiveness so well that you can't even find in your consciousness what it was. I mean, it has been deleted from your consciousness so well you can't even remember what it was. Anybody here experience that? Did you do that? Deleting and getting rid of and taking it out of the Dewey Decimal System of your consciousness? All you did was offer the willingness, and grace did the rest. I only point that out because the ego is very keen to take credit for forgiveness. Many of you are experiencing much greater peace in your life than you did before you started this pathway. I mean, can any of you identify exactly how it is that you find yourself in a similar situation but you don't get triggered? The ego is very keen to go, oh, look how great I've done forgiveness. I got this mastered. Rather than saying, thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Whew. And I touched on this earlier. You know, if your breath is stopped, then recognize, oh, I'm in fear. I don't know what's happening. The mind's going, oh shit, there's nothing left for me to do. But he's saying, even if you do go back, do it from this place of Christedness, not from a place of fear. Not from the place of, I have to figure this out, I have to get it. That's the ego trying to propagate its existence. Rather than going back, as he's saying here, doing it with Christ. Doing it in the consciousness of Christ. In communion with the Spirit. Whew. And not that you're doing something wrong, but out of the desire to be a master gardener. In the way of the servant, he has this beautiful line. It's in the way of the servant, and I think it's also in the Jeshua letters, where he talks about the student has become as the master is. Now, many of us mistake and think master means you know it all. The master knows they know nothing. And in their mastery of knowing nothing and being empty, they are informed by the mind of God or the Christ mind in every moment. When the student trying to learn learns the one lesson that I can't ever know anything, then the student becomes like the master. And that is the end of learning. So for those of us who are trying to become a master or mastering something by getting the technique right, that's missing the point of mastery. The technique is to turn, Father, what is your will? What is the truth here? In every moment, in every situation, in every circumstance. So none of you created your consciousness. Does anybody have memory or recollection, or can your mind even explain how consciousness works? I mean, really, you want to stump your thinking mind, how does it think? How does anything happen within your mind or consciousness? I mean, it's really interesting that the ego thinks it knows so much, but it even doesn't even know how it exists. It doesn't even know how it thinks, that it thinks. It's so ironic. But nonetheless, it's given as a gift. It's a mystery. Jeshua talk about it later in this pathway, that it's an unconscionable mystery, a mystery that you will never comprehend. The sooner that revelation comes, the sooner that drops wholly into your being, the quicker peace will come. And then your cup will be truly empty. Then it can overflow. And he said, but and then the scent of joy and beauty will extend from you for all to receive, for all to see, and to all to marvel at. Not because your intellect is so masterful, but because your intellect finally got that it knows nothing. And it can't ever truly know anything. Then let your cup runneth over, runneth over, runneth over. And consciousness is the gift of your being, your life. And he says capital L, life there, not little life, not the body-mind life, your eternal life streaming forth from the mind of God. Given to you as a bestowal. He uses the symbol of a ray of sun streaming forth from the sun, or a wave from the ocean. All of those things are gifts. None of us created ourselves. None of us created our eternalness. None of us created our consciousness. None of us have really created anything except this tiny little misperception that we call me. Pretty clever creation in itself, by the way, but it's just not where you really are.
And right away, some of you are still seeking to understand the mind by seeing it as something that is locked inside the shape of your skull and is somehow cohabitating with what you call the gray matter of the brain. Rest assured, your mind is unlimited forever, and the body that sits in the chair in your 5-minute exercise is as a drop of foam being expressed at the slightest tip of one wave in an infinite ocean. And that ocean is itself within the unlimited expanse of your mind. You are consciousness as such, pure spirit. The only question then is, are you willing to allow that drop of foam to be transformed into that which fully and always expresses only the love of God, even though that expression is still temporary because the body has arisen in the field of time and disappears in the field of time? Are you willing to say, what the heck, and allow that love to be as fully embodied as it is possible for it to be for the split second that the body is in this world?
Who's ready to join me with what the heck? I mean, why not? Why not? If you think you're the body, you know it's going to end anyway, so you got nothing to lose. Zilch-o to lose. Waking up is a no-loss proposition, because you will only wake up to the capital L eternal life that you are. Then you can really enjoy this split-second experience of being a body in this world. Because in relation to your infinite beingness, your infinite being which is completely transcendent of time and space, just for a moment, just time and space is an idea or a concept held within your infinite mind. So against no time, how long do you think lots of time is? It's nothing. You can't even measure it. You can't even get to half of infinity by using time. Infinity will always be infinitely greater. It's not even a blip on the radar. What the heck? Whew. But how many of us believe that the brain has something to do with thinking? How many of us have compared ourselves to others and used concepts like genetics or like schooling or like anything to say, I'm not as smart as that person. I wasn't gifted with their genes. Or, Einstein's brain was actually physically bigger. All that's bunk. All of that is bunk. We share one infinite mind. It's the mind that's creating everything. None of us has any more intelligence, if you will, within our spirit than any other being. Back to his over and over comments of our perfect equality. Now, clearly, he demonstrated that to a level that no other being has done since. But I know in a channeling that I heard him do from Croydon Hall, he issues a challenge to the people at that challenging to incarnate Christ's mind to an equal or greater level than he did. What the heck? Why not? What do you got to lose? If that's God's will, unless I stand in opposition to that, it must happen. It must be so. If I'll just allow the truth to be true. So your mind is unlimited forever. Everything that arises within your awareness is within you. This is one of the big bridges or thresholds you cross when you recognize you don't end at the edge of what you would call the skin of the body. You don't even end at what you would say is the outside realms of your physical perceptions. Because if you're standing on one of these high peaks here and you're looking out what seems like a really, really long way, and you're seeing all that, you're experiencing that within your awareness. It's not way over there. You're having a present experience of it within you. When you finally get past that and you move past this body's senses as being the edges of your limit, you'll start to experience that within, that everything is within. You can't experience anything outside of your conscious awareness. In truth, there is nothing outside of your conscious awareness because your conscious awareness is that which God's is. So give up any ideas that you've given to, oh, I'm getting old and therefore I can't think. All that's just because you're listening to a voice that says you're the body. The brain has nothing to do with thinking whatsoever. Pure spirit. So you might just ask, guides, I have no idea what pure spirit means. I mean, this sounds like a really cool concept, but what good is it to me going around going, I'm pure spirit. I'm pure spirit. I mean, that's really no different than I'm the body. You're just putting another word in there, putting one concept for another. What would it be like to come to the direct experience of this? Someone was talking to me tonight that they recently had a revelation that showed them they're way more than what they thought they were. That's how you know. Cultivate your field of your consciousness and it will come. The rain will come to show you what you are. Last slide for tonight.
For rest assured, to the degree that you turn your attention to expressing mastery, which is the effect of the way of transformation in this world, in this time, in this little tiny moment, to the degree that you do that, to the degree that you use time wisely to be the embodied Christ, rest assured that when the body drops away and it veils from you no longer the magnificence of the light you are, the light will not be blinding to you, and you will not contract in fear. You'll merely let this world go, gently and as easily as a child has put away a toy that has been outgrown, because its usefulness is complete. All that you see, the body, your relationships, your devices, your stars and your winds and your waters, will eventually be put aside by you, not out of denial, but simply out of recognizing that their usefulness is over.
So you make the choice in life to be fearless, to wake up, to practice authentic forgiveness, to heal, to come to the awareness that you are, so that after death, when that exponential quantum leap happens, you don't contract in fear and find yourself on the short bus list for reincarnation. So that's what we're all doing, is in life transcending fear, so that after what seems like the body's death, we won't contract in fear and find ourselves back with another effort to overcome fear. And again, rest assured, to the degree that you turn your attention to expressing mastery, and again, I'll go back to what I said about mastery, it's not about understanding and getting it right. It's about mastering, allowing, and surrendering. Of myself I do nothing. All things are done through me. That's the mastery. Now that takes quite a bit of humility to set down the thinking mind which wants so desperately to get it right and to take credit for all the stuff that has happened and yada, 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 yada. To that degree that you use time wisely to be the embodied Christ. Not so you meet the karma board or God after death, but to embody the mind of God that is doing all things. The one mind which is the creator of all things, including all of us. He says that's the only effective use of time. If you're using time to get richer, if you're using time to get healthier, if you're using time to find your soulmate, if you're using time for whatever other reasons we do it, then you're just delaying the inevitable. And I'm not suggesting anybody quit their jobs or not seek relationships, but the point is, are you working on surrendering the you that you think you are and opening up to the infinite intelligence that we truly are and embodying that right here, right now, for no other reason than it's your joy to do it? Not to do it for somebody else, because you can't do it for anyone else. You can't fix anyone else because no one else is broken. But to do it because it's your joy to receive the Father's love in every moment. To receive a wisdom not of your own mind in every moment. That's fun. And then, why not be in the world and no longer contract in fear? While you have a body. How powerful a being is that even while in a body doesn't contract in fear. I mean, there's a short list of beings who have managed to walk this world in that way. And you'll let go of this world gently. And again, world, remember he defines world not as the planet, but the world of thoughts and perceptions and self-identity that you've created in your own consciousness. You will set that aside, and what you would say is the world or planet out there, you'll set it all aside with great joy and laughter as a game you finish playing. And what the heck? Why not? If you're not finished playing, you're come back as many times as you want to. There's no prohibition on how many times you can incarnate. But if you're in this room or you're on this pathway, your soul's already said, enough. Will you let the soul rule your beingness rather than your little thinking mind? And then just as easily as a child puts away something that's been outgrown. I mean, the mind you think with, which you're so identified with, which you think is so important, which we trust and believe in almost implicitly, think about it having no more value than a rusty Tonka truck or a Barbie that's missing a leg. And you just, without even a thought of concern, you just set it aside and move on. I mean, most of us think that's our world, that is what we are. And he's saying it's not. And he's asking us to awaken to the truth of what we are. And in that awakening, you see that that's not what we truly are. And you just set it aside in peace. Not in loss. You set it usually with a great deal of laughter. When you see, I mean, that's why the laughing Buddha thing, you just laugh. Because it's like, how could I have been so deceived for so long? That's the miracle. Anyway, all that you see will be set aside. Because if you haven't noticed, anything that's created in time is going to disappear anyway. So what the heck? Why not go ahead and let go of it consciously rather than taking the time to do it? So next week, we'll continue the deepening of lesson number 12, receiving the pearls of grace. Some beautiful pearls of grace here tonight. I'm grateful for those pearls. And if you missed them, you can go back and watch the video again. But watch it as Christ. Any questions or comments tonight from anyone? Okay. Love offering. I love incarnating Christ. It's the only thing I do. It's my only purpose because it's God's will for me. I'm grateful that you're here giving me the opportunity to have yet another experience of being the open channel through which that Christ mind can reach out and touch us all. So I don't work in the world in terms of having a job. I would greatly appreciate your support in supporting One Who Wakes in this work by making a donation, a love offering. There's a basket on the other side of the fireplace for those of you who are here. Those of you who will watch this at home or watch it later, just because you watch it later, the bills still come. We'd appreciate your support. You can go to onewhowakes.org. In the upper right-hand corner is a give button. You click that and make a donation on PayPal. We would certainly appreciate it. And there's the website, and that's where the button is. When I come to do this work, I can't come alone. That's the beauty of it. All beings, all of creation that are awake to Christ's mind come in the joyful support of this work because it is the purpose of their beingness to support us in our own awakening, so we simply join them in extending the good, the whole, and the beautiful. We come as a joyful reminder, and we come to invite you to be the embodiment of what we are as the one I am. And what the heck? Why not? But we love you because we love ourselves with an infinite love and a perfect, perfect peace. And I really do appreciate hugs. If anybody's willing, I'll be by the front door on the way out. If you don't want one, it's okay. No biggie. I'll hug myself instead.